Okay. This is my story.
This is my story.
This is my story.
Now without the nod.
This is my story.
This is my story.
This is my story.
Yay.
This is my story.
This is my story.
This is my story. Hello, my name is Juliette Sneed. I go to the third service. I go to Pastor Stephen DeVore's life group. I actually found ACC on the internet. Once I discovered that I would actually be moving to Decatur, I went online and started looking for a church, and I came across ACC. All of the information was so carefully and thoughtfully explained, particularly about the youth groups, and that piqued my interest because I have 2 young sons. And by the time I got through reading, I was like, yeah, that's the church. That's it. Well, my family has been settled in the Chicago area. They came here from the South in the early 1900s. And I grew up in the inner city of Chicago. My son David is a graphic design artist. He works in Chicago, and he's also a professional photographer. My daughter Candace, she has a master's in nonprofit organizations. My youngest son, Narquise, he's a diesel mechanic by trade. He actually came to the Phoenix area following me, and I ended up leaving him there. So, and I have two sisters and a brother. My sisters are both deceased. They were both younger than me, which is just devastating. And so now it's just me and my brother. And so him and I are a lot closer because it's just the 2 of us left. I moved to the Phoenix area to Mesa at the end of 2005 in December. And then I had my mind made up that I wanted to do foster care. I bought a home within 2 years of moving to Mesa. I bought a home there, and because I needed a home for the children. And I worked full-time, started to receive foster children in my home, and I worked on my undergraduate, trying to finish that undergraduate at night. Altogether, I ended up having about 35 children in my home. That was an adventure that I'll never forget. And it was stressful at times, but very rewarding. Vito, Christian, and his brother Danny came to my home. They were 4 and 5 years old. They came directly from their previous home. From their mom's home. The mom was incapacitated due to substance abuse, and it was just not a good situation. But the good thing is that they came directly from their home to my home. So they weren't passed around in the system before they got to me. And that seems to have made a big difference. I could clearly see that Danny was malnourished. He was the smallest 4-year-old I had ever seen. And he was unresponsive. When he went to kindergarten, they had him repeat kindergarten because he just didn't have the attention span. And so once he got through, thankfully we had, a very good school district that worked with both children. Both children had to repeat kindergarten. And but once they got past that stage, I mean, it was no looking back. I mean, they've done very, very well. And I've tried to give them all the attention I possibly can. My church has been extremely supportive. I've taken them on every trip I can afford. We do travel quite a bit. I've taken them on, I think, 4 cruises now. They just love it, and I do too. Later this year, we have one schedule for Florida. When I adopted them, I was told that I can name them anything I want. And I said, I'm definitely not giving them the Sneed name. Definitely not. There's no future, there's no culture, there's no nothing in that name. So this is where their godparents came into play. And I started talking to the godparents about it. And they said, okay, well, as a family, we'll get together here and we'll figure out a name, especially for Beto, because his name was Guadalupe. His original name was Guadalupe, and I didn't like that name. He didn't like it. The God family didn't like it. So they said, okay, we'll get together and we'll, especially his godmom, she said, we'll come up with a really cool name. I said, okay, fine. So Christian Humberto Romero is what they came up with. Danny's name was actually Danny, and I said, no, his name should be Daniel. And so I named him Daniel. And I asked him, I said, well, what would you like your middle name to be? He said, well, it's a kid at my school. His name is Alexander. And I like that name. And I said, okay, fine. Then your name will be Daniel Alexander Romero. And Romero is actually the godparents' last name. So they took on the last name of the godparents. When I gave the children the godparents' name, that connected them to everyone in that family and gave them a cultural family, a future. Right now, I'm working for Workforce Investment Solutions, and they work with employers to provide jobs to the community. They look for candidates in the community that would suit jobs for the employer. I'm a trainer for the daycare program right now. It's a part-time position. And that's going pretty well. So I'm not sure if that's something I want to continue to do, because I am retired and I enjoy being retired. Let me just put it like that. Honestly, nothing comes to mind. I've been working over 35 years, so I am just so done with working. My favorite hobby is probably home rehab and design. I enjoy all the aspects of it. I've done it twice, and I've been very successful, and it's very gratifying. I like to integrate new technologies into older homes and bring them back to a livability that's modern. I know how to hang lighting, hang ceiling fans, floors. I know how to pull them up and lay them. I know how to do wall repairs. I know how to hang tile, wall tile. So a lot of different things I've learned how to do and do well. Paint. I enjoy the redesign of a home. It's very, very gratifying. And I enjoy fashion. It's just, I've been sewing since I was 12 years old. My grandmother showed me how to sew. She just kind of threw the materials at me and said, okay, this, and this, and that was pretty much it. And then from there, she expected me to get it on my own. So that's what I've been working toward all these years. I have learned how to do it well. I made my daughter's wedding dress, her prom dress. I've made clothes for other people, and they have to be to perfection. Fashion has just always been fun to me. It's just, fashion, clothes, makeup, hair, nails, all of that. I just enjoy all of that because I feel like women go through a lot. They go through a lot in their bodies, and fashion is one way that we just have pure fun. So it's just always been that way. I've always had a closet full of clothes. You know, the Lord has always blessed me. And it's just one of those things where I can kind of, you know, forget about things. And no matter what's going on, you can look good, right? I would say the Downton Abbey series is probably my favorite movie. I can watch it anytime. Once again, I love all the, you know, the cinematography, the fashions are fabulous. The dresses, whatever they put on is fabulous. And that's just, I don't know, I just love Downton Abbey. It's just great. A thriller, I guess. And I would say Jennifer Hudson would probably be the best person to play me. She is from Chicago, and she best represents where I'm from and, you know, my life. The first city that comes to mind is Rome. Just because of its history, and it's just got so much going on. The Vatican is there. So Rome comes to mind first, but my favorite livable city is Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. I've been there 2 or 3 times, and I could easily stay there a couple of months. You know, it's right on the water. And it's, you know, it's all beachfront, and the people are so friendly. The food is fabulous. The shopping is great. It's just such a comfortable place to be. My mom and dad had a lot of problems. They actually divorced at the time I was going into kindergarten. So it hijacked my education, and I couldn't focus, and I had all kind of problems. I was actually in special ed for a few years in grade school, and it wasn't until I reached high school that I started to really have an appreciation for education and really love it. In spite of all that I was going through, I started to develop a love for it. And once I graduated from high school, I went straight into community college. And from day one, when I was sitting in the classroom, I remember saying to myself, you know, I want to go all the way to the master's, you know. And so little did I know what a journey that would be. And but finally I made it. More than 20 years later, but I have a master's in education. Growing up in Chicago was very rough. It was very, very rough. And I had a very rough family, too. Did not grow up in church. I did not become involved in church until I was in my mid-20s or so. I was on my own a lot. My mom always had a lot of personal issues. My dad was an alcoholic, eventually died of alcoholism. So I just didn't have that family support. And so I started going to church. There was a little church that was just steps from my apartment. And me and the children started going there. And it kind of all started there. And I loved it from the very beginning. I just loved it. I loved the fellowship and you know, how loving the people were. And I knew I needed to be in church. Nobody had to tell me. After what I had been through, nobody had to tell me I needed to be in church. So I wasn't feeling the Holy Spirit and all of that. I didn't feel any of that. But I just went because I've got these little children, I've got to get my life together. I started going to Bible class regularly every Tuesday night for 16 years. So I'm very appreciative of the ministries and how they work with me, especially during the early years, and corrected me. I got scolded a lot, and, and I just appreciate it. I just wouldn't be where I'm at now if it wasn't for those ministries that really took their time with me. And ACC does a lot of that, does a lot of nurturing, and that is absolutely needed, especially with single moms and single families, where especially, there's all kind of issues. There's daycare issues, there's money issues, there's, food issues and all of that. And I see all of that in ACC and what ACC is trying to put forth. And I just really appreciate that. I actually got baptized in Lake Michigan. That was right at the beginning when I first started going to that little church by my apartment building. And they went out to Lake Michigan for baptism. And that's always been enough for me. I've never felt like I needed to be baptized again or anything like that. I just thought being baptized in Lake Michigan was just awesome, Maybe 10 years later, then I, really started to feel the feeling of the Holy Spirit. And but it was through just becoming more dedicated. And it was through, so much studying and just, constantly increasing my level of dedication that caused me to have the Holy Spirit. So I'm very appreciative of that. Sometimes it depends on who it is. I've learned in ministry to do a few things. One is to pray on command. If you ask me to pray at any time, I'm going to break out in prayer. So I've learned how to do that on command. So hugging is something I kind of do on command. I don't really think about it. I just do it because, okay, that's what we do in ministry, I have a daily devotional because I need a different idea every day to work with. And then I kind of dig into that to see if it's anything he's trying to tell me through that. And then I have my Bible, and I'm reading like the Psalms, the Proverbs, just usually the Psalms. I'm usually trying to get some kind of word from him, a daily word from him each day, just to keep myself encouraged and, make sure I'm on the right track, make sure I'm praying for my family, make sure I'm praying for my home and my church and all of the leadership here at ACC. And there's much to pray for. There's much to go to the Lord about. I just need more personal time with him. I've never been on drugs or alcohol and nothing like that, but I had psychic issues. That kind of runs in my family among the women. My sanity depends on the word. I have to have that connection with God in order to stay sane. Because this world will drive you insane quickly. And we're seeing more and more of that. So for me, just being in the Word and being close to the Lord is what's comforting for my spirit and my soul. I have 3 natural children. They're all grown now. And it was quite a journey because I was a young mother living in Chicago in one of the most challenging neighborhoods in Chicago. When I think of that neighborhood, I think of vacant lots. Our building was like sitting amongst, many, many vacant lots. But there was 2 churches, one Presbyterian church, one Catholic church. That was there in the neighborhood. We had to walk a little ways to get there, but I remember I had one in the stroller and one here and one here. I had one up in my arms, one here and one in the stroller. It was just a challenge, to say the least. And I can remember, I think the saddest time, one of the saddest days of my life is I was in college taking full-time classes at Chicago State University. And I would go and pick up the children at the end of the day from the daycares at the church. And I remember me and the children walking through these vacant lots, and the snow was just hitting us from every direction. And I just wanted to cry because my children were suffering, and it was just very, very difficult. But eventually, the Lord delivered us from that neighborhood. Catholic Charities came along, helped me get my children into private schools, and paid the tuition for my children all the way through grade school and all the way through high school. And I knew that was nothing but the Lord. That was the biggest blessing I could ever, that was my prayers answered, because I was determined that my children were going to be something, and that they were not going to be gang members, and they were not going to be in the streets. I would say the time that I was at the school for autistic children, that was a time when God used me, but I wasn't really aware of it at the time. My agency, my temp agency, sent me there, but they didn't tell me that it was an autistic school because they thought maybe I wouldn't show up. I didn't know that I could work with autistic children, because to me, it's like the final frontier of working with children. That it's extremely challenging. And then, as time passed, I discovered that, yes, you can do this. And I was there for 3.5 school years, and just the most challenging job I've ever had. But it was very, very gratifying. The Lord closed the door during the time I was trying to finish my undergrad degree, and I owed money to the school. And I don't remember right now how much it was, but it was more than I could pay. And that door closed, and I wasn't able to go back to school for quite some time. It was several years before I was able to pay that encumbrance and then start classes again. But it just made me more determined to finish. I mean, for me, going to college was huge. It was a huge challenge because I didn't have the support of my parents. I mean, that could have been done years ago if I'd have had the support of my parents. But just trying to do everything on my own, trying to get it financed on my own, it was just very, very tough. Taking care of children and looking after the needs of children all these years, since I was 20 years old, has been phenomenal. It's been the most life-changing growth experience that I've had in my entire life. I've always put my children first. I separated from their fathers in order to make sure they weren't being abused and that they don't experience the street life that their fathers were involved in. He's taught me that if I don't give up, that he will bring it to pass, whatever it is. Because he may not show me right away why he's not answering, but later on he'll come back. It could be months later, it could be years later, he'll come back. And then I'll realize, oh, okay, that's why he didn't grant that request. But there really hasn't been much of anything that he hasn't granted. It's taken a long time for him to answer. I don't mind that, but he always answers. He always answers, and so I'm always seeking him for an answer. And I could probably spend a lot of time doing other things, but I need to spend time with the Lord, just trying to get him to, I just want to know, are you still there? Hey, I'm here. You remember me? And so I do spend a lot of time meditating in the Word, just trying to, just connect with the Lord and try to, stay encouraged. Because especially for single parents, it's important that they stay encouraged. There are many days when it could be very discouraging, being with children alone. Even if you have family around, it could be discouraging being a single parent. But, but God will come through. I think the biggest challenge I'm having right now is them understanding that everything in my home has to be nice. It's not a white glove clean house, but if someone walks in, it's not dirt, it's clean to them. If someone walks in, everything is in place, everything's nice. And that's the way my home has always been. So they don't feel any different from from my natural children. They don't feel any different. And people ask me, they say, well, well, you all are different races, And I'm like, that has nothing to do with the fact that the boys have a hard time keeping their rooms clean. I mean, it has nothing to do with the everyday challenges of life. And so that's the biggest issue that I'm having, just trying to get them to keep things clean and nice, keep themselves clean. And and it's something they don't mind, they could live in the woods. It doesn't bother them, And so I think that's the biggest thing that I'm dealing with right now. It's just been a wonderful growth experience. It's a little bit painful because I've been single a long time. I don't think I wanted to be single quite this long. It has allowed me to grow as a person. It has allowed me to learn who I am. Because I believe personally that a lot of women don't learn who they are because they're so busy trying to please others. They never find out who they really are. I've set some standards in my life. I've set some boundaries in my life. And so it's been a wonderful growth experience. If you ask me, do I want anything? No. The Lord has afforded me everything that I've wanted pretty much, even as a single person. So I'm just so, so grateful for that. And I want other singles and families to know that God is able. And you don't have to always be with somebody in order for him to bless. All things are possible through God. You just have to believe it no matter what it is. You're going to see a lot of setbacks and obstacles and all of that. But, you can do it. God is able. No woman has to stay out there in the street and do all kinds of things all kinds of ungodly things and all that. No, God is there and he's able to take care of that mother with those children. And he's able to provide their every need. He's able to provide her every hope and dream for those children. And she does need to have hopes and dreams for them. Because I think my natural children, they just grasped on. They saw me struggling, and they saw me struggling, trying to get through school and everything, and they grabbed onto that. And they say, well, if Mom can do it, I can do it too. And so they need to see that mother doing something. If that mother's not doing anything, those kids are not going to make the effort. It's just that simple. I'm sharing my story hoping that someone out there could benefit from it. There's someone out there that would be inspired by it. That's some mother somewhere, some family somewhere that is struggling can, grasp the idea that those kids are not going to be little forever. Yes, they do grow up, and yes, they can be everything you hoped that they would be, because that's what happened to me. And I remember when my kids were very, very little, they were toddlers. And I had, one in my arms, one in the stroller, one on the side holding the stroller. And at that time, I had huge dreams for them. I was like, gangs are not going to get my kids. I made up my mind right then, didn't have any money, just barely had apartment and food and everything. But I was like, my children, they will not get my boys. And I just hung on to that. And I prayed and I prayed and I, went before the Lord. And eventually the Lord sent the help that I needed. And especially once my children were enrolled in private schools, there was no looking back. It was no looking back. And I made whatever sacrifices I needed to make for them to stay in those schools. And I made up my mind, and from the moment they went in there, I made up my mind I wasn't taking them out. And so I had to endure a lot of criticism and, different things that people were saying because, of some circumstances that were going on with that. But my kids were in private schools and I wasn't taking them out. It was just that simple. And at that time I was a young mother. I wasn't sure of all of my decisions. But I just knew that God had better for us. And I was still holding on to that dream of them being successful in life. And the Lord allowed it to become true. So I'm just so grateful. And I just hope that somebody out there could benefit from my story.